that's my click bar. This is the first time I've had a job that I've actually got things on there I need, and I'm like, well, we got to make alt work, I guess, and hotkey some things. And Gunbreaker's got so many buttons, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare it to everything else, I should say, it's not ridiculous. But when you compare it to like Warrior, where I have 5 buttons I really hit now.
Yeah, I still have Convalescence on my bar. It's got the slash through it because I just don't need the spot. Like.
All right, welcome everybody to Casually Hardcore, episode 26. I'm very thrilled to announce we got Benny from Comicstorian here on the podcast this week, talking all things Final Fantasy, all things narrative. Heck, we might even get into comics. We literally do not know where this show's going to go. We got an outline, we've got it prepped, but literally you're going to be watching probably magic unfold. Benny, introduce yourself to the workforce. Introduce yourself to those who might not know who you are, despite the fact, like, dude, you're such an incredible creator. I could praise you all day, but I'm going to let you at least say hi first. Go ahead.
So I'm Benny. I run a channel called The Comicstorian. We basically take your favorite lore within video games, movies, and comic books. We break them all down into an audio drama where I pretend I know how to be a voice actor and act out the scenes within the comic books or the games or whatever. We also run a channel called Tales of Earth where we talk about conspiracies and real-world stuff. We have our gaming channel called Eligible Monster, and that's also the Twitch channel where I stream Final Fantasy XIV pretty much Friday, Saturday, Sunday mornings, like every morning. And then whenever I get time in the middle of the week, I go live with Final Fantasy XIV. And also Warframe and Elder Scrolls Online and a couple of games. But that's pretty much it. I just do that stuff all the day.
just that enormous list right there. You know, that's all I achieve.
I haven't really done anything. I mean, I don't know.
We post, and I don't know. People watch it, whatever.
I put it up there. They sent me a check. I'm happy.
Yeah, exactly. People enjoy it. So, if you guys missed our last podcast, we had Heal Me Harry on talking about just the excitement for Shadowbringers, and so it was a fantastic time with him. And then, obviously, we've got a lot coming up on today's show. We're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIV, obviously the hot topic, which is Shadowbringers, and obviously the narrative in which that plays within games. So it's going to be a fun show. We do want to say thanks for the partnership with Exit Lag. If you guys check the link in the description, you can get 3 free days, and you can use the code DOWORK for 20% off. I actually was the first thing I'm talking about issues is that there was a little lag with Shadowbringers. A lot of people got kicked, and I didn't. And some people checking it out, telling that it's actually really working for their ping, and it works for many, many other games. Check it out for 3 free days. And so that's the business. Now let's have some freaking fun. All right, dude. So Benny, tell us about your history of Final Fantasy. It could be focused in 14, but really,
I go way back. I go way
back. Play it a long time, like Legacy.
So so I play Final Fantasy. I've been following since the original release of 3 in America, which was 6, obviously.
Yeah.
And then 7, and got into every single Final Fantasy, beat it all the way down. When 11 dropped, I got hopelessly addicted to 11, and played that on my PlayStation with that old brick hard drive you slide in the back.
It didn't work for me.
Oh, really?
I literally 11 was my first MMO, and I got it for PC, and I was like, oh, the PlayStation was delayed in the US. So and I had an old PlayStation, I got that thinking it would work. Wouldn't work at all on my old PlayStation. And then it was like, oh, I already have it on PC. I'm going to stick there. But I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. If you guys probably have not seen my podcast, but trust me, it's all about cutting each other off. So I played 11, played it like crazy, went to the military, kind of fell out of playing it. And then I got way back into it right before I deployed to Iraq. And so I went to Iraq, and they'd give me 1 day back in the rear. And they had an internet that played 11 for some weird reason. So I'd bust out my laptop, blow off all the dust, and play it. And I actually met my wife on it while I was in Iraq. She's from France, and I met her in the same time zone. So we would chat every single night. So I got to the end of that, and so I got to the end of the whole tour, came back home, went to France to meet her finally, and then 9 months later we got married. And we have played Final Fantasy from 11 all the way until it finally kind of, when they increased the job level from 75 to onward, I was kind of like, all right, I'm gonna take a breather from that. I'm not too interested in what they're doing there. And we took a brief breather to come back at 1.0. and then just 14 onward all the way until now.
So you and your wife, you and your wife still play 14 together?
We do. She actually quit during Stormblush. She finally said she'd had enough of it.
Not a shocker.
She finally had enough of it because I like to try and raid and try to do the extremes. And she was like, she was only getting on for plot purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shadowbringers drops and she is like all in again. And she's like, why are you going out ahead of me? I'm like, you weren't even playing a week ago.
I got a question because me and my wife have been having this conversation. My wife fell off with Stormblood. Also because we had our third child. I mean, it wasn't like Stormblood wasn't really interesting. It just was like, well, we got lots of things that are going on, and so she's thinking of coming back. So she's like, should I come back? And really, and this is just kind of like, I don't know if you can like answer this on air, and if you can't, we'll just move on. But it's that she was asking she's concerned because of the growth within the community. As somebody who is recognized when playing the game, she's pretty private. Like, you don't see her in videos and things like that, and she likes it that way. But she's very encouraging and very supportive. But she has does your wife have that same kind of concept? Because how you've blown up within the YouTube spectrum, how you've got all these different social media aspects that people, I don't know.
Well, for us, we've kind of gotten used to it because she runs our gaming channel, the actual YouTube side of it, and then she branched off to do her own Twitch thing. So after doing this for 5 years, we both have just kind of gotten used to being recognized, or people finding out where we are, or the games that we play. With Final Fantasy, until I started streaming it, I did try to keep quiet as to what I did in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
I would just be like, oh, I'm just a guy that plays. I'm playing a cat girl like everyone else. Haha. It's been weird ever since we started doing the lore videos, and like more of my actual comic book community is aware that I'm playing this, because I'll get random tells and things like that. I don't think she's getting that as much right now, but years ago she actually made Final Fantasy XIV machinimas.
Okay.
And they did very well too. And that's actually how we met the community team for Final Fantasy XIV, because they liked what she was doing.
Nice.
Stopped doing it because it took so much time to make those machinimas. The style of joke videos that like Larry Zor.
Mm-hmm.
She was doing that before Larry Zor was even around or he had blown up. So.
Okay, that's really cool because that's
we're kind of used to it to an extent.
Yeah, I'm trying not to like make her feel overwhelmed because it's like all of a sudden it's like, okay. Anyway, I just thought that was curious because it's like our joke has always been a family that stays together. So we always try to find you want to make sure you're always having that kind of opportunity. It sounds like you both work and game with your wife in that regards because she's running.
Oh yeah, we've never stopped. Final Fantasy XI onward, we've always gamed or whatever. And like when one of us falls out of the Final Fantasy rotation, then we just find another game to play for a little while.
Nice.
Or something along those lines.
Very nice, very nice. So overall, like you said you really kind of came in with Final Fantasy. We're going to call it 3 because that's how I know it as well. People can do the mental translation in their mind. What's your favorite Final Fantasy game to date?
So combat, I actually like the original 3, where they just introduced the jobs and they didn't have a grand idea of what they were doing.
Yeah.
Story-wise, 7 for me. I know some people like to, it's full of tropes and we all know what's going to happen and Cloud's emo, and I'm like, but he wasn't in the original, and that was the best.
What do you think about the remake 7 coming up?
Oh, I got to play that at E3. It is amazing.
That's what I hear.
So good. Okay, everyone's like, it's not 15. It is 15. If they had time to make 15 better.
Oh, thank you.
So, yes. So did you play 15 towards the end of its life cycle where you could swap people?
Yeah.
So take that, but now add a reason to swap people and an ability to pause the game and command them what to do.
Yeah. Did we just become best friends?
I think we did. Yeah, we definitely did.
Like, holy crap. Like, that's where it's like, to the point where, so I had a friend that we do the Aetherite Radio podcast with, Charles. He was out there at E3. He got to go play it. And literally, I think he's saying the same thing. It's like, this is the battle system that we want. And
yeah, 15, I felt almost like it was a test demo for what they're doing in 7. So
yeah.
I'm super on board with it because I loved the 15 swapping battle system. So them doing it for 7. And then the fact that they're calling it remake and they're letting us still have the original. They're not trying to like wipe it out. Okay, I'm on board.
Cool.
I'm gonna let Chris. I'm gonna let Chris jump in on it with the question.
I got nothing. So I want to talk about Shadowbringers. Like, in all honesty, that's how I've been all week. My wife asked me if I was drunk the other day because she asked me a question, and I think I just stared off into space. Like, when I am logged out, like last night, they shut the servers off and for maintenance. And
sucked.
I logged off, and then I couldn't sleep, and I was like, maybe I should just go do like a couple of cutscenes. And then I was like, oh no, the servers are off. I can't go do a couple cutscenes. So like there is no ability to, like, I can't think of anything but Shadowbringers. So I'd rather move to our main topic. If you guys
I mean, I'm in the exact same boat. I did the 3-day stream of like 7 to 10 hours of just constant streaming. And then when the stream would go down, and normally if I'm streaming a game with a plot, I go, okay, I'll be back tomorrow. And then it's like, nope, 6 more hours of Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah, you guys just have to deal with what you missed.
It's exactly
I'm still
what I was
playing.
doing. I was like, you're just gonna deal with it. I'm gonna keep going.
So any issues? Well, like I would say for me, smooth launch, a couple things, but like what's your hot take on basically just kind of on issues itself?
Overall, this has been the smoothest launch I've seen. I've been here. Like 1.0 was disastrous. I couldn't even play it at launch, and never mind after that. It was more like I play it. 2.0 was great, but I think all of us had that hesitation that it's just going to be just as bad as 1.0. Servers were an issue with that, and I mean, I remember Heavensward getting stuck in queue forever to log on, and Stormblood. Oh God, Raban Extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other MMOs that you've played like through an expansion that you have to compare this to, like some perspective within this?
So you named the MMO, I've probably played it.
So like I played a lot of WoW over the years, and they're on a 2-year cycle, and they have content patches. And so from a purely like content and server structure and like how that's perceived as the individual player, whether or not they're the same, I can directly compare one launch to the next. Like BFA launch versus Stormblood, BFA took it by far. BFA versus Shadowbringers, a little bit harder as far as the smoothness of the launch. And then as the smoothness of the content, I don't think there's been anything better than Shadowbringers probably in the last decade for me.
No, and I agree with you 100%. I got into this expecting login issues, quests that wouldn't work, glitches beyond belief. But now bear in mind, I've got a pocket healer, and I'm going Gunbreaker, so we never had a queue issue, like going into dungeons. But there was like no hiccups, no major hiccups. The biggest issue we had on the Aether data server was if you tried to log in at prime time, you'd be sitting for 30 minutes to an hour to get in. Since I work from home, I would log in at 5 a.m. and just wiggle the mouse every 30 minutes.
Just all you gotta do. It's auto run into the wall. Let's keep going. Yeah.
We got about 10 minutes left on this podcast before you may need to tab over and wiggle the mouse.
I've got it going on that other screen. I got 4 screens, man. We're good.
This guy's professional, Chris. 4 monitors.
I will not be logging off. Don't worry.
So what's your main? So you said you're playing Gunbreaker, but like what? Like tell me. Are you thinking that's going to be how you keep rocking it, or what were you maining
I think I'm going to stick with that. For me, every expansion, I normally adapt to what I need to for the free company, because we run our own free company and stuff like that. So I kind of adapt to what they need. So I did Black Mage way back at Realm Reborn. I swapped over to Warrior during Heavensward. Stormblood, I became a Summoner, and now I'm feeling that tank groove. I thought I was going to be Warrior again, but Gunbreaker is beyond broken. It's so powerful. I was doing the Rabanastra Alliance raid.
Yeah. And
the entire raid wiped to the Chariot boss, the 3rd one. It was me and a red mage, and somehow for 3 minutes, he didn't even heal me. I just stayed alive. I'm just holding the boss while he gets a couple of healers out.
That was Warrior during Stormblood.
Everyone else up. And
yeah,
I'm like,
that was the Warrior during Stormblood. It's like
I mean, I think it's great that 7 other people came into trials with me, but...
That's what I'm waiting on. I'm waiting for the 8-man Gunbreaker group or the 8-man Dancer group trying to do things. That's what I'm waiting on.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so obviously, like Gunbreaker, very popular, very balanced, and like very just like overpowered in that regards. Yeah. What would you say? Like, have you played around with any of the other jobs? Have you touched anything yet, or have you been just hitting the story 100%? Gunbreaker forward.
So whenever I do the new expansions, I always go straight in on one job all the way to the cap so I can get that armory bonus on everything.
That's exactly our advice.
Because everyone's like, I got a couple people that are like, oh, I get every job up 1 level. I'm like, 1, you're taking forever. Wow. So you're behind the content curve. 2, the armory bonus is what you want. So you want to get something way up there so you can just level another job. I also run with all of the retainer slots, all 10.
Mm-hmm.
So like I need to get those up as quick as possible too. So having the armory bonus makes all that work so much better.
Retainers.
What?
What do you think of the interface change of the retainer?
Right now I have a personal mission to get 1 million gil on every retainer in the first week so I can just see it. Because I love this new interface.
Yeah. It's so freaking fast. Yeah. Like I told my wife, I was like, like it's so fast. I have yet to adjust correctly to it because I end up anticipatory clicking because before you click and wait. Now it's like click. Oh, I'm in there. Oh, I'm there. Oh, I'm there. Okay, I'm done.
I feel like this is a change we needed like 3 years ago.
We still need the I want to send them all back out on what they were doing before button.
Yeah, just re-go.
They've given an answer to that. They said it's just like I guess it's a concern for pulling everything out at once in your inventory and you not having room. So I think that's what the actual issue is. They were saying they have no way to
retainers inventory.
Isn't there an if then else statement in coding that we could say like if cannot accept, then say clean out your inventory, bro. Oh my god!
I mean, don't we get that message?
It could auto error if I don't have 10 slots. Even if they were going to spit out the same item, just go ahead and verify number of slots times number of retainers when I click the button. Good enough.
I say even better than that. Just give the warning. Because if you've done a lot of Heaven and High and Palace of the Dead, when you go to exit, they say if you do not have room, you will not get these items.
Yeah, sucks to be you.
Yeah, just
awesome.
Should have thought about it.
Now, what section of the settings do I have to click so I don't get the warning anymore? Because I don't care. just send them back out.
I'm gathering crystals for the love of God. It doesn't matter. they're gonna stack.
So on battle system changes to kind of finish that topic out, what are your thoughts around like anybody in your community? We've got a lot of pushback from people saying their job is ruined and stuff, but then when I follow up, a fair number of them are like, my job is ruined, but I'm only level 74 or I'm only level 77.
Gotcha.
So, but my initial reaction to that is kind of like, well, I guess finish the content, because how do we know that the class isn't balanced around being level 80? So we're going to be 80 for the vast majority of the next 2 years. So, do you have any concerns about any classes or anybody you're playing with? Concerns?
Not really. I got a scholar friend who hated it until 80, and once he got to 80, he was loving it. An astrologer friend, he likes the changes, but he feels they made it too easy, so he went white mage. But so far, everyone I know, as the jobs have leveled up, are perfectly fine with it. Like they have no real major issues with it overall, or the changes like Dark Knight's completely different, or things like just love them.
I've been kind of I do Summoner to Scholar the way through because I feel like it gives you 2 jobs for the price of 1. And one of the things I've been doing is I've been doing nothing but group content as my scholar, and I actually really enjoyed the changes. Sans 1, the inability to use my Aether Flow outside of combat has on big pools and long pools. It's like I have to sprint ahead, toss out like a Ruin 2 so that I could just pop that ability so I can be ready for whenever the pool stops. I have no ability going in to have any kind of stacks, and that just like that is like I'm like I don't know if I'm going to get used to it, but I can tell you right now, like muscle memory has just been killing me on that one simple thing. Like just give me that ability on Scholar.
They could do a change like Enochian. So as a black mage, like we had that ability, right? With that kind of like the lulls in combat just killed you. It's like, oh, not the little lulls, not the long lulls. It was just those in-betweens where I was totally spinning back up, but the party was not. And they gave us the ability to kind of fix that. So I wonder if they'd make a change where you kind of have some kind of little juggling act that you could do to keep things moving.
I think they're just gonna fix it and let it pop. It. I know a lot of scholars who are just like, it's like an anxiety thing. My Aether Flow's not up, and I can't click it.
It's I don't know. It just seems that whenever you're in combat, it doesn't seem to be a problem, and that's the weird thing that it trains me to sit here and not be able to have that muscle memory, and that's what I'm saying. Like, is it some? I honestly, that's just the feedback that I have. That one change to Scholar just would be what I would prefer. Other than that, I've actually really enjoyed the changes to Healer. Like, personally, I feel, and people keep asking me about it, and I don't know if they're asking your Scholar about it as well, but it's that they're like, how does it feel now? And it's like, well, I feel like I'm always healing. Like, I'm doing a lot of that. And then occasionally, I get to put out some damage, like, as things are mitigated. But my mindset is now tuned to the healing. My priority is healing. I am a healer. How do I make sure the party stays alive? And as I get more comfortable in that aspect, it's going to be neat to see as I balance that, because really the measure is going to be the raid and then the extreme. The measure of is this mindset going to work? And honestly, I'm of the mind right now, having just hit 78, having been running, the content both in lower level and current, and I'm sitting here saying honestly, I think that there's going to be a healer gap, meaning there's a skill gap that I feel is going to be present among healers, and it's going to be attuned to that. And we're going to have to see how that balances out over time. That's just my rough read, not having done any extreme trials yet.
I agree with you on that one. I do like the healer changes because one complaint all of my healer friends have always had is I'll DPS because I need to, but I shouldn't have to. And I've always agreed with that. Healers should heal. Now, I do find it funny that they went from healers should heal, so we're going to pretty much make them healers, and they went tanks. You're just blue DPS now. Just deal with it. That's all you do.
You're just a DPS.
It felt weird that they were like, well, we can only have 2 roles in the game. So like if healers were DPSing and they're going to start healing, we got to delete the tanks.
Yeah, the tanks don't do nothing now.
I was a little concerned about that as a tank, as somebody who's been maining tank for a couple of years now. I've really been enjoying it. I've been a DPS and a healer the vast majority of my MMO career, discover tanking through Stormblood, tanking in a BFA, and then do we get another expansion? They're like, we might be removing your role. And I was like, no. So like, I don't want a DPS rotation. I had that on DPS.
Right.
I understand people saying, well, they didn't use the enmity rotation before, so there's no need for that. But, you know, I have workout equipment in my house I don't use. So technically we should get rid of it, but that's not going to get me in better shape. So like, you know, getting rid of the enmity rotation just because we don't use it isn't a good reason to me.
I mean, on high-end stuff, though, we did use it to an extent. I mean, that was the whole point of stance dancing, you know, and you'd go back and forth to lock in the hate, and then you'd have to shirk, and then you go back to your DPS stance, and you drop 6 fell cleaves and swap out real quick, and it was fun, and it was more challenging, and it made it more interesting. And you're right, we barely used it, but should you get rid of your workout equipment because you're not using it all the time? It's just...
it's going to be interesting because...
Go ahead.
No, you're just going to say make a thing about protect. My thing was going to go into controller, so we'll talk about that in a second.
I said, so, yeah, I think that's how I feel about protect, is people were like, well, you only use it at the beginning of battle, but you don't. So A, it's what tells me that I'm ready to pull as a tank. I don't have to do a countdown. The moment protect goes out in most content, I can pull. Yeah. And second of all, it's not just a flat 3% reduction or damage or whatever the percentage. If they were to adjust the percentage up and down, that's not what matters, because that's easy. You just adjust the amount of damage outgoing and the math adds up. But you die, having buffs that fall off is incredibly intriguing because there's this additional penalty and there's this additional step. And so it's just like flasking in other games, like in WoW, you flask before a dungeon. You could just reduce all the content down by the cost of the flask. But the importance of the flask is there's that preparedness, there's that mindset that I think there's something healthy to saying, like, you know, like I wear a collared shirt when I go to work. It doesn't matter if they tell me I don't have to. I wear a collared shirt when I go to work because that's what tells me I'm working.
Right.
So I think getting rid of protect was an oversight.
So having go ahead. No,
I was gonna say, with the loss of protect, I will say I've become one heck of a bad tank to work with. All of my healers have said, because now it's like, well, there's no protect. Sprint.
I ran a dungeon in 15 minutes this morning. Like, no,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
I ran a 50, 60, 70, dead sprinting, chain pulling. And at one point I was mad because I didn't remember that the dungeon had a wall where we had to, it's like, I can only triple pull? What is this? And I'm just running around popping cooldowns. I was like, keep up.
It's funny because like I'll run with my raid healers and they can handle it, no problem. And like I'll go in maybe to something else with a DPS friend, and I'll start doing it, and I'll just hear on Discord, stop! It's like a noob healer or something.
Well, that's what we got in trouble with the whole.
We mowed it down. 15 minutes out, on with our comms. Let's do that.
That's where we actually got in trouble as my scholar. It's like I was pulling, running behind, and it's like, can't use Aether Flow. Okay, now I got to switch to a target. Now I can actually burst heal, and we ended up burning that down because he ended up go too far. And it's just like, hey guys, I can't Aether Flow. And it was like I use the ability, but like I hate when I use a heal, and it's like he had 2,000 HP. I lustrated, and literally he died. And it's like, what the hell? Like, come on, game.
Well, the Gunbreakers, their Uber ability, their ultimate, because every tank has that. It's basically hallowed ground.
That oh Jesus moment.
Yeah, the oh Jesus moment. I use it to pull now because it brings your HP to 1, but I can't take any more damage for 8 seconds, and its cooldown is so low that pretty much I can use it on all big pulls. So I run ahead of everyone, pop it, just start AoEing like crazy, and then like my white mage buddy runs in, he's like, benediction, holy crap.
That's sounds like fun. That sounds like a hell of a good time. On the tank changes, I do want to say, like, as a controller player, 4.4 was brutal. Like, it was like with all the different abilities and all that. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed about the media tour, and one of the things that I'm enjoying right now, having still not picked up my tanks yet until I finish the story, just like you, pick a job, get to cap.
Yeah.
Then have fun. Then play. People like,
I have friends that are going to their alts. Like, I have multiple alts. I'm not touching them until I get one job to 80.
Yeah.
Why are you leveling multiple things up? Just get there. Just
get to cap. That's the game is get to cap because it helps you win.
Cap.
But as a controller player,
what's the fastest way to level? Just main story, get to cap. Main story, get to cap.
For the whole last couple of months on Final Fantasy XIV streaming, I title it, come and ask any questions, newcomers. And that's like the number one question I get. How do I level? Just do story. Just straight up do story. And then
is that the fastest?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it is the fastest.
It doesn't matter.
Job.
For your first job. It does, yeah, because you're like, oh, Palace of the Dead's faster. Great. And then you have to come back and do story. Like,
exactly. I had a buddy who was trying to convince his girlfriend to boost her job to 60 because she found the story boring and she wanted to get through it faster. I'm like, you're going to make that worse. Because now she's going to nuke the story and there will be no challenge. She's not going to have any fun with it.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
If you're going to do it, have her also skip the story. It's like,
exactly.
It literally, if that's the thing, boost her, etc., and let's go.
I had another friend do that backwards. She boosted the story, but not the job.
Wow.
So she was 68 on Stormblood, boosted the end of Stormblood, and still didn't have a 70. And so she's like, well, now what do I do? And I'm like, well, now you're screwed. You either have to boost your job or get in heaven on high.
Roulette and go fade it up. I didn't run in. Like, I think I maybe ran maximum 2 fates in all of Stormblood. I have run hundreds of fates within the media tour and within now, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. Oh my goodness. My final thing I was just gonna say is that as a controller player, like the tank changes, way more comfortable. The summoner change, like the changes as a controller player overall, minus like a few adjustments that I would see personally made to summoner, like Akmorn is still its own ability, and I can only use it when Bahamut's out. Like I don't know why they didn't make Death Flare or heck even the ability to summon Bahamut turn into that ability, because right now it's like, okay, there's 2 slots when literally there's really only the need for 1, because I can only etc. But beyond that, like as a controller player, I am very comfortable. I am very pleased with the overall battle system changes. Tank, healer, DPS, like I haven't run into a job minus Gunbreaker. When I was out of the media tour, Gunbreaker was like, holy crap, we got a lot of things. I've
never had to use all 3 bars on a regular, because I have like the Naga, I have it set up for the first 2 hot bars, and the third one's always been my click bar. Oh, that's the button.
Just gotta click. Click.
And that's my click bar. This is the first time I've had a job that I've actually got things on there I need, and I'm like, well, we got to make alt work, I guess, and hotkey some things. And Gunbreaker's got so many buttons, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare it to everything else, I should say, it's not ridiculous. But when you compare it to like Warrior, where I have 5 buttons I really hit now.
Yeah, I still have Convalescence on my bar. It's got the slash through it because I just don't need the spot. Like
exactly, yeah.
It's fine.
Oh, you didn't follow my guide. I was like, I cleaned up all my hot bars before I went and even did a quest. But then you got ahead because you were most of the opening of the game was just story, just cutscenes. Without talking about the story, because we're not going to do spoiler.
In the first 100 hours, there is a very good chance that everybody here has watched more story than spent time killing things.
I will say I've
only been out
love it,
hours.
Oh yeah,
I'm loving every minute of it though, because it feels like a Final Fantasy.
It is.
That.
Yeah,
A Realm Reborn felt like an MMO Final Fantasy, and Heaven's Sword felt like an MMO Final Fantasy, and Stormblood felt like a political thing that they wanted to have a Far Eastern country in, and but this feels like, with the ability to respond to stuff, the ability to see the Scions with you, even like running up at the end of a dungeon.
Yeah.
It feels like a true Final Fantasy. And it even has like the Final Fantasy moments, the melodramatic moments that only exist in a JRPG,
That's interesting. That might be, so here on the channel, like Brian is the guy for all the lore, because I came into ARR from WoW, and I was in a free company of legacy players. I'm already a WoW player, so I'm already in a skip cutscene mindset. So I blow through ARR to catch them. They have no ability to come back and play with me. I'm like, awesome. I was like, how do I play with you guys? So like, we have to be level 50. No problem.
Not a problem.
So I just blast through it. Just push the escape key, off we go. Well, then I get to Heaven's Word, and he's like, dude, the story is amazing. You got to slow down for it. I slow down for like one cutscene. I'm like, I have no, like I literally just came in on like the 3rd episode of the last season of Lost. Like, all right, so then I just go back to hitting the escape key. It's like
Right.
there's no value to me in this story, and I get that it's awesome. It looks great, looks like fun. I'm picking up tidbits, but it's like overhearing somebody's conversation. And then we get into Stormblood, and I'm like, I try really hard because at this point we have the YouTube channel, so we're spending a ton of time with the community, and they're all talking to Brian about this, and I'm just sitting over here quietly like, I have nothing to say. And so like I'm like, I want to be involved in this conversation. And so just like you would go read about something if you have friends that are interested in it, I'm like, I'm gonna watch all this story, and I'm still lost. And Shadowbringers is the first time that I feel like the story hit the reset button hard enough that I don't have to have watched cutscenes for the first 3 games to understand what's going on here. They've done a great job of like stopping and explaining it to us, like, the children in the room that don't know what the adults are talking about. And I didn't know why, but that doesn't make me watch it. I still could have hit escape. So what I couldn't figure out the last couple of days is, why am I not hitting escape? Like, what is the reason?
It's the presentation. That's what I've noticed. The presentation for this one feels like a true Final Fantasy, while the other ones all felt like the MMO merging of a Final Fantasy title. And what I'm loving about this is they're treating Shadowbringers like it is a fresh start for everyone. By moving to the first, we're reintroducing everyone. They're reintroducing all the scions. They're reintroducing how everyone's important, what they're doing. We're no longer, go back to Gridania. Hope you paid attention to Realm Reborn. Go back to Limsa. Hope you paid attention to Realm Reborn. These nations are going to battle against each other. Oh, you don't know who they are because you didn't pay attention? Because none of what's going on in Eorzea ultimately matters right now.
Right.
So we're going to all these new areas and learning about all these new things. And not only are we learning about it, but all the scions and characters are as well. So it's basically holding your hand through a true brand new storyline, but your character gets to keep going.
And with the trust system, just to kind of jump on that point, and that's where ultimately, and maybe we'll go and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Ultimately, the game's going to have is at a crossroads. I don't have any idea what they're going to decide to do, but Shadowbringers is a single player RPG because you can play through it completely solo, which is great. It's also a single player RPG that actually lives in an MMO. So you get to play this like amazing narrative. I wish you could bring friends into these fights with you. I wish it scaled in some way.
Like a mix and match kind of deal?
Yeah, I wish it would just be like if we were all playing, it's like, oh, I'm at this battle, and then you could play it solo, and it's scaled to solo, or that'd be the one thing I would change, because it is a weird break in the pace, because I'm usually in a group with people. Yeah. But beyond that, it's a Final Fantasy game, and then when you beat it, you're like, oh, you've already been in this MMO. People are already running around you. The world feels alive. It feels like there's so much dynamic stuff happening. And so from a narrative perspective, the thing I really like about this, the thing that I really liked about Heavensward, and I'm going to ask you a question here in a second, but the thing that I think ultimately didn't work for me in Stormblood is that I think with Shadowbringers and with Heavensward, it was a very focused narrative. Like, there was a story, there is a goal, there are obstacles in that path. And then within Shadowbringers, like, I get that things had to happen, but we kind of split it up. There was like the things that felt like they were going on in Doma ultimately helped out, but it didn't. I never felt connected to the Alamingo and the Domans. They were
you're right. I never did either.
It was just this. It was kind of like, okay, like you got, but it necessary overall for the arcing that we've built this alliance. We are now fighting the Empire, but when you come into Shadowbringers, it's like, oh, there are some legit stakes here. Okay, we don't have time to dick around, for lack of a better expression. We don't have time to sit here and go, well, let's go deliver whatever. It's like everything's being introduced, like you said. And for me, I think like what I liked in Heavensward, especially with the dragons, I love things with dragons. Yep. But it's also that high fantasy. Like, we got fairies, we got dwarves, we got elves. You like that? We got it. It's like you're just sitting here, it's just delivering all this stuff. And they're done so well. Like,
that's what I hated about Stormblood.
Yeah.
I hated the fact that we went so far away from high fantasy. Because it's Final Fantasy. I like the steampunk. I like the high fantasy. I even with WoW, I didn't like Mists of Pandaria. I've never been a fan of the Far Eastern aesthetic, throwing it into a game that's high fantasy. And WoW, it was orcs versus the humans, and we threw all these different races in there. And by the way, pandas are real. And I was like, what? No, that doesn't make any sense. And in Final Fantasy, it was like, yeah, we're fighting against the Garleans, and it's this crazy, like, high-tech, magitech kind of a deal. And all these races, they're all, like, very high fantasy. By the way, the Alamigo we've been talking about, yeah, it's all Far Eastern. You're going to deal with all of that. And Kagani, yeah, that just looks like old school Japan, and it's cool. And I'm like, it's okay. I like it, but I'm not, like, into it.
I was frustrated ultimately by Kugani. I didn't feel I ever connected. We were this outsider. And then we could enter in this part of the city, but there's a whole other section of the city that outsiders are not permitted, and this is just a port city that's serving the Ruby Sea. And then you have it was just, I'm like,
I'm
okay,
worried Crystarium's too big for that reason.
What's that?
I'm worried Crystarium's too big for that reason.
I don't know.
The
Crystarium's gorgeous.
gaps in the plazas. Oh, it's beautiful. But the gaps in the plazas, the gaps between vendor, I'm worried that it's too big to be usable. Like, we don't fill it with tens of thousands of NPCs. So, are there going to be times that you have to run across these huge distances to get to something?
Well, I think Crystarium's going to teach us how to use the Aetherites in town finally.
I've been working on trying to memorize them, even if I had to run back, even if it takes me longer. I've been running back to make myself use that, because that's going to be the only way to navigate that city.
It is, to do it in a hurry. I mean, going with just the presentation of Shadowbringers compared to the other games, I feel like Final Fantasy XIV, ever since 1.0, has been in a weird groove where they were like, we want this to be a Final Fantasy with a story as deep as a Final Fantasy, but we're a WoW competitor. We're an MMO. We had to make it an MMO. And one thing that I've noticed through each of the expansions is they've been more and more leaning towards the single player aspect, more and more leaning towards, we're a Final Fantasy that you can play with your friends. And I feel like Shadowbringers has completely flipped the narrative on its head, and it's gone from being, this is an MMO that has a story, to this is a Final Fantasy story game that has an MMO. Yeah.
It was so frustrating to get all the battle system changes, and then in the first 3 hours, I think I killed one coyote. And I was like, you could have sent this out as a cutscene and made me watch it yesterday when the servers were offline, and then I could be killing stuff right now. Yeah. It was so frustrating, and and it was beautiful. I wasn't skipping them. It just was but I also wanted to kill things. And they've been giving me some incredible axes for my warrior that they update every hour.
The gear, guys, the gear. Holy crap.
Done it. But it's in cutscenes. I'm not using it to kill anything.
Right.
Now the dungeon content, when we get it, has been incredible. It has been on point. They hit hard right from the very first 71 dungeon. They were like, yeah, we're assuming you know how to play this game. From the very first dungeon, there was no, we're going to hold your hand. There was no, if half your party goes down, it's going to be fine. No, it's not going to be fine. You're going to die.
Right. But that's the strength of the trust system, too, is that it gives players the ability to sit here and not necessarily step in and mess with somebody else's thing, to where in a year, 2 years, 4 years, oh, welcome to Shadowbringers. Enjoy the thing. It's okay, you don't necessarily, oh, wait, you haven't been playing for 4 years? This is frustrating. We're trying to do a speed clear, because apparently I believe that when I match with randos, that they're all queuing with the same objective that I've got. I
actually love the trust system for what it is, because, obviously I have a free company I run.
Yeah.
And I have a very clear divide. I have your casual, I have three. There's three people that are in this group, and they all come in here because we run it with our whole company and our Discord. We have a whole community we run with this. So we have the RPers who don't want to do anything. We have the casual people who want to get into the high-end content, and then we have our high-end content players. And our high-end content players, I don't worry about them at all. We bring them into extremes. We do things like that all the time.
Yeah.
That middle road player, the one that wants to get into the higher content but doesn't know how to do it. And I love the fact that the trust is pretty much forcing you to learn your job. I've had so many people that are in our free company that I know they want to do the higher end stuff, but it's so hard to help them when you don't know what they're doing wrong. You don't know, is it the rotation? Is it their camera issue? I had one person I discovered they were trying to turn with A and D and not spinning their camera. They were actually slow turning. And I'm like,
using A and D.
Huh?
Sorry, I'm an ESDF player, so I said your first problem is using A and D.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. But that's what they were using. They would spin, and you could see them slowly turn. And I'm like, And what I've noticed with the trust is a lot of those problem players. I say that bad. They're not really problem players. They're players that we couldn't figure out the issue with. They've done 2 trust dungeons, and they've improved immensely.
Yeah.
Because there's no one to blame. Because before you could be like, well, did the tank mess up or did the healer mess up? You know, oh, did the DPS not do enough DPS? Why is that? Well, but going at the trust, you're the only person. So unless there's a glitch, you got to figure it out.
Does the game need like DPS meters or some kind of stats that report back to you at the end? Because regarding trust and regarding player improvement, what are your thoughts?
I think it does. I know Yoshi P is 100% against any kind of actual tracking, and so we all have to like never mention that we use ACT. The problem is you've made your game DPS focused.
Yeah.
If the game wasn't DPS focused, and like if the fact that they put an enrage in there, you need to give me a way to track who the weak player is so we can help them improve. You're going to get those people that are just complete and total tools trying to yell at everyone, but you got to deal with it if you're going to put an enrage timer on the fight. Remove the enrage timer, and okay, I can bring in some really poor performing DPS, but we're there for 20 minutes and we win. Cool. You know, like,
yeah,
but
they don't wipe the group.
Yeah, you gave me a timer, and if you gave me a timer, I need to be able to see who's doing poorly, or if it's me, if I'm not doing it right. Because half the time you don't learn that you're like. I remember when I first did Black Mage way back in the day, I thought you spanned Fire 3. I was like, I had no idea about the rotation of doing 1 because it does more damage, it gets out faster, and you don't discover these things unless you realize you're not actually doing a lot of DPS.
Yeah. That's really cool to hear you say that especially about the trust and how that's actually helping people out. I just think that with it, Chris and I've always kind of said is like the game doesn't teach you how to play. Like going and being a solo healer or a solo white mage, like you don't go into then group content and be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing, because you have no understanding of your full kit. You have no use of like situations. You have like, and so ultimately it ends up being a little bit frustrating in that regards, you know. And so when I play with my wife, like she would be like, Brian, can you parse just so I can see where I fall with another bard? And obviously gear score is going to help and make a little bit difference regards, but if she's getting blown out of the water, like what are they doing? Like what are they doing that I'm not doing? Because I think a lot of people make the false assumption that, oh, these players, they don't want to get better. And it's like, honestly, they're going to work, they're making sandwich, they have no concept that you could be doing better, because the game doesn't even tell you that you're doing poorly. It's like, we won, you know, it's like we got the clear. Like, and yeah, it was fun, and I had a good time. Did this happen? You know,
that's the only thing they see. They see the clear, and they don't know that their 2 deaths almost wiped us or whatever. Mm-hmm. They just see, oh, we got through it. I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
The game needs some kind of an indicator, and even if you don't want to do official meters, just like have a flashing thing. You were underperforming DPS. You can go, oh, I need to improve DPS. What am I doing wrong? And that at least you have the idea. I should go look into something.
Yeah, I need to research.
You never look. He does it. What's weird is that this game does not handle PvP as well as some of the other MMOs.
Yeah.
And yet, like, PvP gets a meter at the end of every match where it tells you how much damage you did. It tells you how many times you died. It tells you how much healing you did. I can sort the chart by that. Like, it's weird that they reveal the numbers in PvP and then turn around to PvE and they're like, ooh, we could never do that.
Nope.
It's like, nope. Just give it to me at the end of the dungeon. If you don't want to show me my parties, that's fine. Don't show me my parties. Show me mine, or show me the average for another Black Mage, or show me what your trust Black Mage does. Just give me a ballpark so that I know that Black Mage is A through F rating. Just something.
Have you played the Black Ops 4, the latest Call of Duty that came out this October, Benny?
Yes, I played a lot of it until they charged me $1 for a red dot.
Agreed. The stats at the end of it is what essentially I've always dreamed for. It's that I don't need to see how everybody else did. That's fine. But I like to see how I did compared to me. And there's enough content that I wish would be like, oh, hey, did you know that last time you ran this dungeon, you were at this. These are your numbers and this. Oh, now you're this, or you're less than this. It's like, how can I beat, like, to the point where make people compete with themselves ends up being a way of just saying like, oh man, like I'm gonna try to go for my personal high score. You know, of what I can control. Like, okay, did you stand it bad? Well, okay, yeah, maybe you lose a point. You know, did you dodge that? Oh, that's good. Did you heal? Did you raise? Did you know, like, I don't know. People worry about it, but I was like, I honestly, like, at the end of it, if it's a personalized kind of thing, I think ultimately it ends up serving, just like with trusts and with the group of players that are like now kind of filling themselves out because they're not doing it in a live environment. They're not impacting other people, and there are people who are nervous about that. Like, I don't want to ruin somebody else's experience.
Yep.
You know, and so it's like, yeah, let's help. And that's one of the beautiful things about the community, though, is that they are so very helpful if you set that expectation. If you let people know you're new into the content, it helps set that expectation so that person, that tank, you literally like, oh, I don't need to wait for protect, I'm just running into it. It's like at least knows this, oh, we got a fresh healer. Okay, let me make sure they're comfortable with the way that I'm going to try to play it. And if we're not, we'll make an adjustment.
I mean, we have the mentor Sprout returning player thing, but I think the Sprout and returning player is just way too broad. Like, you have that Sprout and that returning player for so long. It doesn't tell me if you're actually
hours.
Huh?
168 hours is how long the Sprout lasts.
You can turn it off. I did on my alts.
You can also turn it back on.
Yeah, I know. And that's just it. It's way too long. That doesn't tell me if you just started yesterday or if you just started 3 years ago and just have not played that many hours. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a really good indicator. They're getting there. They're getting there for sure. How far along in the game are you right now? Like within Shadowbringers, have you cleared the MSQ or are you still working your way?
I am at the last dungeon. I'm waiting for my healer to get on. We were going to do it earlier today, but then the whole schedule got messed up.
Sure.
So last dungeon. I have gotten all the way up there, and I actually got off yesterday an hour before the maintenance because I'm like, I don't want to run the last dungeon and get midway through and then it kicks me off.
Yeah.
I went back to Destiny for an hour or two.
Oh, you're playing Destiny right now?
Yeah, I figured with the big changes coming, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and just kind of get pseudo caught up, maybe do some of this.
I quit Destiny. That was like, thankfully, Chris's video about 14 this year finally beat it in views. It was like our biggest video for a small channel. I quit it, and it's like I've come back because like they're not just saying, but they're doing what I feel is the right things. But I've told Chris is that they can't mess up because right now they can say, yeah, remember Activision? You remember that stuff that you hated? You remember how we would do this stuff and it never felt quite right? It never seemed to like actually finish the thought. Yeah, that was those guys. But if they go and they just royally like screw up in terms of their monetization or whatever, then it's like, oh, maybe it wasn't like Activision. It's easy for that to say. I always kind of said that their split with it is that there's like a president. He comes into the office. There's a letter. He opens it and he says, all right, if you mess up, just blame the previous administration. If you mess up again,
I would 100% agree.
Write a letter. Like, write your letter because you're done. It's like, okay. So I'm actually really impressed with what Destiny has been doing. And it feels like their actions speak, that. And that's where from 14 1.0 to 2.0, like, I'm always rooting for them. I'm always rooting for devs. I'm always wanting games to be good. And I honestly, like, the more that they can do that, and it's also funny that there's called Shadowkeep and we're Shadowbringers. It's the year of the shadow. Yeah. Like, it's a very dark year, but the games are phenomenal right now.
We are definitely becoming like best friends because that's the exact argument I've been having about Destiny because I left it. When they came out with, I've always done the story for it. I've always gotten pseudo caught up, and I've always been like, I'm not gonna play into your game. I'm not doing your loot boxes and stuff. And I'm excited about Destiny for that reason because the big problem I've always had with it was how far apart their DLCs were and how far apart content was. And I've always used 14 as the example because even in WoW, when we had that 18-month drought of no content, Chris, and I was like,
literally said we're done.
Yeah, I was what is wrong with you? Like 18 months, no content. Destiny goes 6 months, no content. I'm like, just follow the model of 14. Yeah. Even our smallest patches give you something to do for a couple of weeks. I don't understand why no one else can maintain this pace, especially when they all brag that they're bigger than 14. Yeah. Like, you can't tell me, we're the biggest MMO, but we don't have money to maintain content. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm sorry. not having. Well, and it's like, to your point, like one of the things that has really spoiled me is that 14 content cycle. It's that 3.5 months. Here is a holy crap. Like, here is a crap ton that literally is going to last you, like, if you play it actively, 1.5 to 2 months. Because as a game, we encourage you to go play other games because we feel like that's the healthiest way to enjoy games. It's like if you felt like you could never walk away, I honestly think the numbers are you probably, when you finally do, you never come back because it's kind of like you have to cut off your arm, and they don't want that. They want you to be able to come in, enjoy the content, in and out, and back and forth. But when I look at like to your point, like they had like it was always like it feels like the Activision thing. They'd call them freaking expansions. No, Destiny has an expansion once a year. And then they would have DLC drops, and they were calling them expansions. It sets the wrong mindset. It sets the wrong volume. Like Shadowbringers, that's an expansion. The Trials of Osiris, that's just a DLC drop. Like, that's just, not like, it's just a, here you go. Here's a couple of quests. Here's a couple of things going on. Nothing really to see here. And it just was just, oh, man. That's when Osiris is like, I was like, I'm done. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I swore off. I think Osiris may have been the first time I did. But to go back to what you said originally, though, with I 100% agree, because I'm excited to see what Destiny's going to do, because now we don't have big bad Activision to blame. If they come out and don't give me content, if they mess it up, if they give me a bad microtransaction, it's Bungie. It has been Bungie the whole time. So,
so on that, dude, let's transition a little bit in WoW just for a second, because like you and Chris share a WoW background. I played Mage to like 40. I do not have a dog in this fight. We had we were talking about it recently on the podcast with WoW and with BFA, with Activision Blizzard being that, like, is Activision the big bad? Are they a company that is just greedy, for lack of a better word?
They got married in 2008.
Yeah. There
wasn't a mother and a child. They got married. They are siblings. They are married. They are spouses. Blizzard is perfectly capable of screwing up their own stuff.
Yeah.
I think Blizzard's problem is the guys that cared left. Because if you look at all the people that have left, it's all the ones that started this. They did the story. They actually cared about it. I feel like everyone that actually cared left. Everyone else just wants to do what Activision wants them to do.
But not every company can fail when the founders need to retire, because if they hadn't retired now, they would have retired eventually. They're not immortal. So, like,
for the record, I left at Legion. I BFA dropped. I was debating not doing it, and then everyone said how bad it is, and I'm like, yeah, not doing it. I'm done. I'm officially left.
So I played from the month after launch in Vanilla through toward the end of Pandaria, and then I skipped Draenor. Heard all about it. I was like, that sounds awful. And then I came over to 14, and then I came back towards the end of Legion with the anticipation of BFA being good. So I came in hoping BFA would be good, planning on getting caught up, planning on being aware of what the game was. So that's where I'm coming from. And I think BFA, the launch was really smooth. The initial content from leveling was wonderful. I enjoyed the new zones. I enjoyed the stories they told. I enjoyed the combats. My issues with BFA were everything that happened after. Like, the initial launch was great. I enjoyed the first, I don't know if you played on launch, but I enjoyed the first week.
Yeah, skipped BFA.
You're done. So you're totally. So did you go back?
I left midway through Legion, and now, like, when BFA was coming out, I was debating going back. So I normally went back at the beginning of every expansion. And there was something going on. I was tied up with something or whatever. Maybe I was just playing more 14. I don't remember. But I was just like, it's probably best I don't go back at this point. I think I'm just done. And I just
tried it. My friends that said they quit still come back for launch. So, like, they still play the first 2 weeks of every expansion.
Right, and that's what I normally
They're like, yeah, I quit in Pandaria. It's like, oh yeah, and I played the first week of every expansion.
I've been a part of them all. I just didn't raid. Okay, well, then you played. You played the game, guys.
You played. So when you compare MMOs, it gets to be really touchy. Especially in the 14 community. The 14 community is very passionate about what makes 14 different, what makes 14 unique. So do you think that these games all have obvious parallels, or do you think that they're so distinctly different that it's not fair to compare them?
So I get flack for this sometimes, but I do feel the core of 14 and the core of WoW is pretty much the exact same game. 14 has the things that make it shine, which is primarily the storyline and stuff like that. But the big thing that has hooked me to kind of like 100% just be like, I'm done with BFA and all that stuff versus 14 has been Final Fantasy 14 has done a wonderful job of not forgetting where it came from. Stuff that we've gotten in 2.0, 2.1, 2.2 still gets updates. Things like the Chocobo Racing, the Triple Triad cards. We got a whole bunch of new ones. World of Warcraft loves to create content that is fun, like farms, garrisons, even the artifact weapon. And then as an expansion drops, goes, forget all that. It doesn't matter. Don't do any more of it. We just got an update to retainers. Retainers came out in 2.1 or 2.2, maybe even 2.0. I don't remember, but they were like a starter feature.
Yeah.
We got them at launch, kind of a deal, and we just got an update to that. I feel that
1.0, but yeah.
We
didn't have jobs. We didn't have really anything to do besides just they would sell our inventory, et cetera, in one. But then two, like, because they even had like job, like class level in 1.0. We're always like, what is this? And they're like, we don't know.
But that's just it. Like, we've got literally, they brought back and updated retainers. If this is WoW, they'd be like, we just made a new version of them, go over there and level those guys. Because they did that. Garrison, you had your first guys, and then in Legion, they're like, and now you go recruit people. It's like, you couldn't combine these two systems, guys. World of Warcraft since Lich King it felt like they try to treat every expansion like it's a brand new game. And that's what bothered me the most. And 14 has managed to make everything kind of loop back around and come together. We're still using Gold Saucer. They could have easily been like, here's Gold Saucer 2. And you're like, no, just put more stuff in the Gold Saucer.
The challenge within the game right now, because we talked to Yoshi P about this in our interview, is that there is still a lot of technical debt that 14 has in regards of kind of how they had to go to 2.0 and 3.0. So that in 4.4, they've ninja patched, they updated the back end for the Chocobo companions. And it's nothing we've seen yet. So maybe there's going to be something about that later. So when they do those kind of things, when they do go back, when they change the retainer menu, when they go and make these changes, like the cost to do that isn't like the cost to build something new. That's why you look at Shadowbringers and you see Fates, and they haven't gone back and taken that Fate idea and brought it into the other areas. If they do, which I honestly would be surprised if they don't, but I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to do it because we have no idea. If they do, that is the biggest love letter that they could write to the community, because developing it for Shadowbringers from an engineering perspective, because that's just like, that's how I see things as a software engineer, it's easier. It's like, okay, cool, let's just do this. We're not bound by these constraints. And so they built 14 kind of in a Jenga tower style. So when they have to go back in to do Fates in another zone, it takes a lot of meticulous level of work, because you could literally F everything up. You could knock down the whole tower, because like some things are still related to each other. So the fact that they're still going back and doing that, it's not happening as personally fast as I would like, because when I saw the Fate change in and of itself, I'm just like, this is the best. I'm doing Fates again. And if it hits a wall, like if it hits all of a sudden, I'm like max rank and everything. I'm sitting on the max, what I call Bitcoins. They're the the bicolor gemstones, Bitcoins in my mind, because that's how I saw the word the first time. And but I'm like, if it hits a wall, then I'm going to be like, oh gosh, like I want that to be like we were talking in the pre-show, evergreen content. I want that to always have some kind of value, to always have some kind of appeal. That's no matter what, it's going to be that way forward. So ideally, that it's what we see a lot of. It's really easy to take those things and bring them forward. The work they do when they go and do the retainer stuff, when they go and bring that stuff back into previous content, it's I would estimate, like, think of it as 3 times as hard as it is making it for the new expansion, because they have so much that's built on it and built around it that they have to take into effect. Chris, do you have a thought?
No, I think it's interesting so I do think the games are different, and I do think they have strengths and weaknesses, but I think it's interesting to see people from both communities' perspective, because I can tell you identify more with the 14 community, because some of the things you pointed out I actually disagree with, because you say that 14 doesn't let content die, but we kill a relic every single expansion.
Well, okay.
It just dies. And then
I agree with you on that. I do agree with
that. Squadrons gave way to trusts. Yep. They couldn't make trust just an expansion on the squadron system. It's a whole new system. Our tombstones just die. Like, that's an inherent thing that just that just turns over. And then even with just in our content cycle, like, we have such a struggle with going back and using our roulettes for more than a tombstone grind. There isn't any rework of the dungeons where you can go back and play them on a harder mode, either as a Greater Rift style or a Mythic Plus system or anything like that. And so, like, those dungeons, people get really frustrated with, like, MSQ roulette, because they're like, I don't want to do that. That's a huge waste of time. So, like, I do think this game has those things, and so I just think it's interesting to see where people point out one game's weaknesses, because I think these games are so identical, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I agree with you that there are some. I think. I mean, when I say that they don't let things die, there is an inherent MMO thing that has to die to be a theme park MMO. Mm-hmm. Like, we always have to make the next dungeon. Absolutely. We always have to make the next tombstone. That is a system WoW created, though, that you always have to constantly update. I wish we didn't. I wish it was closer to 11 style, where it was a lateral, so, like, everything was still valid. But at the same time, it's still better than what WoW, because I like the fact that they create a lot of these systems. Like, you bring up Squadrons versus Trust, but they haven't said that they forgot Squadrons. They were adding dungeons to Squadrons 2 patches ago. It could still get more stuff for you to work on. They still haven't given us a way to level them past 60. We still could easily get them to 70, and it becomes a new, easier way to go to 70. Because Trust only works 70 to 80. So there's still, like, room for growth in a lot of those things. And the recent behavior towards Squadron says we're probably going to get 60 to 70 dungeons. They just always give you, it seems like they use Squadrons for old content.
Yeah.
Well, the trust is going to be
the AI that it takes to kind of set that up and stuff like that's really quite fascinating. Same thing when we see with the trust system right now is that it's such a scripted narrative that it is tailored. Like it's like they're all the characters are doing are running through this really defined, not just with the lore, like from a lore guy, like. They're giving characterization. They're talking to each other. Like Alizé will pop that limit break. It's like,
Yeah.
but you can kind of like, oh, this is how they act and interact with each other. That's truly fascinating. It's been immensely enjoyable to kind of see how it plays. I honestly, that's kind of where, I'm at. So when we talk about like progress so far, like I'm almost level 79. I'm working my way, moving towards the 79 dungeon. I'm really thrilled about getting to do that, but probably gonna be playing tonight, continuing that on, and I'm just enjoying it like this fantastic piece of art that it is. But I think that from the narrative that they've already expressed, from the world of the first, from all the little things that they've kind of talked about and what's been happening, it is interesting to see like where does this game go from here at 6.0 and 7.0, where all these amazing features, if like I'm sitting here like saying, hey, you got to come play this game. It's like 4 games, until you get to the current game. And the current game is going to have all these nice little solo features that you have that you need, that you're going to enjoy. Because my wife is like, oh, they got trust. I mean, I can run this on my own pace and not necessarily worry about messing up somebody else until I'm comfortable with running it for people. Why don't, like if they don't either bring this back to 2.0 and 3.0 and 4.0 areas, like at some point, like narratively, like, I don't know where they're going to go with it. Like, are they going to squish it? Are they going to like sequelize it where it's like all of a sudden there's a big event and now you have 14.2 or 17 or like whatever they decide to do, where it's like, okay, and this is because I was like, do you take away Heaven's Word? Do you take away the ability for somebody to play through Shadowbringers? Well, no, like those things are such like a work of art. But at some point you either have to start over, you have to start everybody kind of in a fresh perspective, or you have to go and just retool almost the core 2.0 and 3.0 and 4.0 areas to bring in these things. Like, when I saw Trust and how it works, going hands on, I'm like, they have to put this in 2.0. Like,
they won't.
They can't. It's going to take an insane amount of work. Is that work justified, or is it easier just to say, and here's a new starting point for everybody that has all that stuff baked into it?
I have a theory on that.
Yes, give me it.
How they're going to do it. So my theory is we are setting up for the actual calamity will happen.
It has to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not done, so I don't know how resolved it gets at the end of this. But I mean, so that's not even that. I don't consider it a spoiler, considering that's what we're setting up for since Storeblood. I feel like they're going to do that because 1.0 to 2.0 was such a success at such a starting point. I feel like we're going to get the calamity. They're actually going to do it. And they're going to restart the game. And I feel like that's the purpose of putting in New Game Plus and all these systems that allows you to solo things so that they can go, all right, so we are officially doing a calamity. You're all going to start over, but you'll have your legacy tattoos and all the stuff you wanted to do. But if you want to go back and play your old characters, New Game Plus, go back to Eorzea, go back to Nordvant or whatever it's called, go back to all these other areas. But here's the starting point for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like they're setting up to go in that direction, to do that big reset.
Right. And that's where a lot of, I see, like when I looked at Stormblood itself, I'm like, they're working on something behind the scenes that we're not going to see for several years. And if they're not, I'm worried. Because if they're not, there is this what's called tech debt. It's that sense that how much time, money, and resources is it going to take to build these things? And the game itself is getting so heavy that it's like it takes, Yoshi P expressed it. We saw it with Eureka. Eureka is the best showing of the technical debt that Stormblood had, is that not only was it delayed, but even features that they had planned for its launch got delayed to 6 to 9 months after, and where people said, oh, this whole thing, wow, I like it, but you still got to go through the muck to get to this. And then it's like, oh man, if they only could bring that backwards into the core, like, what a cool concept, what cool content, wow. And it's like, and that's where I'm like, right. And so it's like, ideally, if they're doing that, like if this is going on, what I cannot, I will cry, I will weep when they make that announcement at a fan fest. Like, by the way, like you said, we got a New Game Plus. So, because I was like, how
they don't have to delete it. They can just phase us back into it. If you want to go experience ARR, go do it. But it is optional. It is 100% optional.
Or you can start here, and here's the story so far. Because I was like, I've struggled with that, but you made a really good point. I never even made that connection. New Game Plus, because essentially, but you're right. Like my thought is like how bad would I feel to tell somebody they could never go actually experience Heaven's Word who wanted to go and experience Heaven's Word?
Yeah, and I feel like they're setting up for that. Do you guys follow Elder Scrolls Online at all?
We played it.
Okay. It's got its own issues. I mean, I like the game, but it's got plenty of issues.
I'm currently subscribed to 2 MMOs. Let's cap it.
The problem I think with ESO is it wants to be a theme park MMO, but it also wants to be sandbox, and they don't mesh well. You can't do both, and that's their problem. I feel
think a game needs to be basically what I call a sand park. You know, it's that like it's literally like I think one of the things that 14 would benefit from, and we have sandbox elements. Role playing is a sandbox element. It's that giving the players the tools so that they can go and play. And the theme park is really good because it gives people an objective. It gives them attractions that they can go participate in. I would like, and I've always kind of wondered, like, because you and I are like Benny and I were Final Fantasy XI guys. Like 11's the sandbox.
Yeah.
It's that you go and you make your own objectives. You go and make your own goals. And it's that if you could kind of, I don't want 14 to be 11, but Eureka was a hint of how that could work. And honestly, World Visit, we've talked about, Chris and I've talked about this at length on live streams, but the weakness I saw in Eureka was the instance nature. It had to live on instance servers. But now we have World Visit. They could literally spin up a quote-unquote world that lived on just like our world servers, Sargatanis or wherever, but all of a sudden that world, different zones, own rules, non-instant, so it's not going to retire after so many, after like 3 hours, and you can use you have all the features that you've come to love as a part of being in the open world, and they could do whatever they want with it because it's separate, but all the data center can come into it rather than because that's why they had to go instant server, because all of a sudden if it was open world content on that server and they didn't have World Visit, and they didn't have those kind of features, all of a sudden you're like, well, this is like
rule.
Yeah,
that's rules. It had hard rules, right? Instances expire. I can spin up an unlimited number of them. They have a controlled number of players. They do not have their own party finder system. So it had all these constraints in which the instance server thrives when it's handling dungeons and raids. But Eureka was bound by it. So now you can make a world with its own rules. And World Visit is literally just a server transfer from a single controlled point in space and time. So you go to this room where there is a limited, you'll notice that the main Aetherytes you transfer from are spaces that, are fairly limited in what they can render. It's not just every Aetheryte in the world. It's like, no, we have these set spaces and you're going to jump to an identical space. Great. World Visit could be the Eureka NPC could be a World Visit node. There's couldn't be.
What I was saying about the ESO, and it goes on with what you guys stated. Well, because ESO does their expansions, and the way they treat an expansion is it's a fresh starting point. A brand new story, start a brand new level 1 character. You're going to start at a brand new area. You can go back. You can do everything, but come join Elder Scrolls Online because it's a brand new adventure every single time. And I feel like that is what they're setting up for, because what I feel the problem WoW ended up running into is it's been around too long. So they were always trying to catch you with the new and the shiny instead of expanding on it, garrisons, expanding on a farm. They were always like, we got to make something brand new. And 14 is now, like you said, running into that problem where it's just we've been around a while. So now we got to either fix things from like forever ago, or we need to start over. And I feel like they're leaning to the start over.
That's how I'm feeling too.
I think WoW supports systems that work. I think garrisons didn't work. So the reason they don't support them is because they're just letting old content die.
And I agree, because Pokemon proves
their pet system, they support their archaeology system, they support all of their professions.
Brawlers Guild.
They support they've brought brawlers, and so they have brought their battleground system is immense now. The sheer number of battlegrounds is obscene. They just only support. They follow the same mentality Blizzard does. So when you listen to old Blizzard devs, they talk about how they would cancel half the games they worked on. And so WoW does the same thing. It cancels half the content it puts out. And
but the problem with WoW is that it lives forever.
Only supports the top half.
Yeah.
My issue with WoW is that it lives on forever. They don't just close it out. It just, like, you go back to Draenor and you're like, wow, this is an area we have zero reason to ever return to. How's my garrison doing? You guys all alive?
Yeah, that's why I hope that with the Calamity we have a chance to rebuild the zones. I don't know how it'll be done, but the devs at 14 have proven that they have the ability to surprise us. So I hope they find a way to keep things like, what are we doing with Thanalan? Like I go back to Thanalan to see Mutamix. All right, I got too much materia. I'm gonna go back and visit, Blackbrush Station, where there's a crossover event. So I'm gonna go back and visit Blackbrush Station. And it's why like this fate change is so incredibly intriguing, because it says you could go do this with every previous fate, and it's just adding a currency drop to it. And then you could put vendors, you could just put one vendor somewhere in the Crystarium that says, could you bring me, gemstones of the source, and you just go run fates anywhere you can on the source. And each week it's like, oh, this week they're dropping in Thanalan, this week they're dropping in the Shroud. Yeah. And you go run those, and then what does that vendor drop? It drops more Orchestran Scrolls, more mounts, more minions, glamour, dies. It doesn't have to drop anything of value. It can just drop cosmetics and optional content, and we will go kill those fates.
Oh yeah.
Well, especially while you're in queue as a non-healer.
The first piece of content that 14 has put out in a very long time that I said I'm not doing was those Namazu earrings. They're like, go run like 50 Alliance raids.
Oh, it was an absurd number.
I was like, no,
There's a month till launch.
For glamour earrings, not doing it. I'm not, nope.
It's good that they do that, though, and that's the thing. Like, I have always said that I don't need all the content in the game to be made for Brian. I want to make sure that the content in the game is still made for somebody. Yeah. And I think they do a really good job at that. And it's hard because sometimes you're like, like when I've talked about it, I did not really get into Stormblood. And I look back at it, like, I didn't get into Rika. I didn't, like, PvP kind of just died away because I got tired of waiting in queue. Like, all of a sudden, like, Stormblood was a couple of dungeons, couple story quests. Like, I'm like, I don't need the gear, So, honestly, it's like, I leveled up all my jobs that I hadn't leveled, and I found a lot of enjoyment doing that. And then, so we talked to Yoshi P, that the one thing I would literally love to see, and he says he's going to talk to the devs about it, but we'll have to wait and see, is just that I hate when XP expires. Like, I love how Destiny 2 does it. Like, you get XP, they give you whatever, like that Bright Engram. Cool, thanks. Thanks for playing. Thanks for gaining another quote-unquote level while playing and getting XP. And so we talked to Yoshi P, is like, can you just bring in a glamour level or something, something where you keep giving me, like, XP still has value, and then at the end of it, you give me this, like, coffer, and you open it up, it's got some gil, it's got some tokens, it's got some whatever, I don't care. It doesn't matter, because I'm not doing it for that. It's just, thank you.
Or a Paragon system that just slowly lowers my teleport fees to those zones. and
like a merit system, but all glamour.
Well, it has to be.
It's nothing.
You can't bring in a merit system.
Shroud means nothing. It does no damage to the game. The teleports are not expensive enough to be a real gil sync. It just, oh, wow, my teleports are free to Central Shroud. Awesome. How cool is it?
The first complaint about teleports I've ever heard. Someone was like, it's so expensive to teleport from the far east back to the main world into the new world. And I'm like, how low is your gil?
Yeah.
Like,
I haven't even started farming gil yet, and I'm up 2.7.
I've made almost
not even done with SQ.
Yeah.
I don't even know where it's coming from.
I don't know about, but I have made over 10 million world hopping since the started. I keep buying up the things that everyone wants, and I resell it on my server.
Exactly. That's what they want you to do, because you're helping to normalize the markets, so they can just turn on the one world market, which is what I'm looking for too. Because I've been buying. Good.
I've been buying up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of primary stat materia, like thousands of them, because they're selling literally below vendor cost. So twice a day, I go check primary stat materia, and I just buy them up below cost.
So,
nice.
So Benny,
I've been doing Tavnanian onions lately.
Yeah, those are make that money.
Those are money.
Make the money. Those things print money. So what are your plans for the summer? Like, so you're hitting cap. Like, what, like, content wise, you say you're going to be focusing on lore, which I'm excited about because I enjoy it.
I mostly do lore. I like to level jobs. That's my big thing. I do intend on trying to raid, but with my philosophy, one of the issues I have with 14 is actually how fast they make gear obsolete, like to move onwards. Well, because in my opinion, if you're going to raid and you're going to truly savage raid, you need to be able to make progress in about a week or two. If you don't, everyone's now going to start getting tomes and getting the gear. So you like the purpose of raiding, other than a personal achievement, is kind of gone out the window. If you're trying to do it for best of slot, you're kind of ruining it. That's just my personal opinion. So, like, if I can get a group that's good enough to actually progress, and we're not working on like the second portion of Savage 4 weeks in, and half of us have tome gear now, then I'll probably do that. But I'm mostly going to focus on leveling and whatever they're going to bring out, whatever the new Eureka is going to be. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
They better do Eureka. They better not go back to make me farm light in an old dungeon for hours.
I think you can have a system of both. I think that if like dungeons and whatever gave you like 25% of what you would get from Eureka, like I'm just making that number, it works out. Like, oh, I got 20 minutes to run a dungeon roulette. Cool, boom. All right, I got a little bit of it. Not like ideal where I'm going to go spend a couple of hours in the zone, but it's not like A or B. It's like, okay, I don't need it. I don't need the old ways to be the efficient ways, but just give me a little of that taste. Give me a little of that sugar, just a little bit. A little bit.
If you go back and watch all the interviews, they've hinted at kind of where that's headed. And so I don't think you're going to see a total departure from Eureka. I don't think that they're going to totally toss that out. I do think that it's going to be different, and they want there to be a larger focus on large group play. So the idea that there's a huge number of people doing it together with a common goal is going to be a theme.
I loved BA. If they bring back like a BA style thing, I'm on board.
And they said they're going to invest in that content more and more. And I was like, yeah. And I think that one of the hardest challenges with BA was the limitations of the instant server and all the different like things that people had to go and jump through hoops to try and participate in. And ideally, I think obviously they've got enough data to know what they need to do. And ideally, they can go ahead and they got the time, talent, and the money to make it happen. Man, we were gonna talk about. Oh, go ahead, Biddy.
I was gonna say they shouldn't have made it a situation where like you can't. They should have made it so you could queue right into BA. That would have fixed so many. Like the whole thing of having to do it inside of Eureka.
But you're also in an instance. It's like it's instantception. Like all right,
Agent Man is so challenging that you need communication, like of some form.
Part of it is by design.
Oh, I know, and I liked that, but that also led to the inevitable split of no, I'm gonna snipe portals because I refuse to use Discord, and then the Discord people being like, it's so easy to use Discord, and it was interesting. It was an interesting argument in the community.
So I totally lost track of time. So we are way over on time, and we did not even get to like what I felt were like the more like harder hitting Comicstorian questions, like the importance of narrative in video games and what it means to have made a shift back to narrative with Shadowbringers. But honestly, those were topics that I was afraid to tackle since Brian and I haven't finished the story, and it sounds like you got just a touch left. Yep. So we would love to maybe have you back around like 5-1 and kind of see where this is headed. So
you guys are great to talk to.
Thank you.
Final thoughts.
Finally, somebody recognizes it.
Where are you at? Final thoughts with Shadowbringers, like just general hype. What are you looking forward to? What are your hopes for the content? 5.1 looks enormous. What are you most looking forward to?
Honestly, all of it at this point. Going back to the high fantasy has hooked me in a lot more than I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
Like with Stormblood, it was kind of like a weird game with me of being like, oh, the new dungeon's out. We'll run it a little bit. Oh, the new raid's out. Let's go try it out. But I wasn't hyped about it. It was more like kind of like how you probably were with WoW and how I was with WoW. I'm really invested in this game, so I'm going to try out all the stuff, but that doesn't mean I'm going to like it all. So far, everything I've experienced in Shadowbringers and everything that I've done in Shadowbringers and I know is coming to Shadowbringers, I'm just excited about everything that's coming out. My biggest complaint right now is that we have to wait 2 weeks for the raid and the true tomes to come out. So I'm like, I'm going to hit 80 and then I'm just leveling again. Drat,
I'm actually thrilled by that fact because I'm like, holy crap. Like, I got to finish the story. I got to start working on my alts jobs. I got to gear up my main. So I'm like, 2 weeks? Perfect. Like, this is great. Like, okay. Nobody else can get even further than me. Like, if I was starting if I was like, hey, I'm going to play Shadowbringers and it's September and they're like, well, buckle up, Buttercup, because you got a lot of work to do.
I do like the way they're pacing it. It's the problem that I've always had that I always argue against. Like everyone's always like, "There's no content." I'm like, "Yeah, well, the rest of the world didn't do it in a day." I had quite a few people that blitzed entirely to 80, and even I thought I put a lot of time in, and they blitzed to 80, and they're like, "Man, I really regret doing it in a hurry. I have nothing to do for 2 weeks." And I'm like, "Well, you blitzed it. Now you got to go level another job. What do you want to do?"
Level down.
Yeah.
There's plenty to do. It's just a matter of whether you want to do it or not.
Yeah.
It's not, like that's the thing that frustrates me when it's like no content. It's like, let's just clarify, no content that you want to do. It's like there's things to do.
Right.
You know?
I used to listen to a couple of the older Final Fantasy podcasts, and they got to a point where they would just complain about all the content that would come out. And I had the exact same argument. I'm like, I don't even know why I'm listening to this anymore. They're just complaining. And they're like, nothing came out. And I'm like, I'm running around doing all the new gold saucer stuff. I'm running around doing the dungeon. What is this? What you're like?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's astounding. I can talk all day about the similarities between these games at a mechanical level and on paper, but what you can't capture is the execution. What you can't capture is the way it makes you feel. Shadowbringers is the first time in a long time that I have had a mix between like my heart rate being elevated, getting goosebumps, being near tears, wanting to use explicits when there's a twist or a turn in the story. I'm literally laughing at how fun the mechanics are in the dungeons, and these are leveling dungeons that I'm doing because I'm not at 80 yet. It reminds me of when I used to lose sleep and get behind on real life because MMOs were so good when I was a kid and into college.
Yeah.
Like it's been so long since a game has gripped me this much. It's hard to explain. Like, way to go, Yoshi P and his team. Like, just astounding.
Yeah. I feel like this is a great, like, I feel like 14's been on the teetering of trying to find that perfect melding of the casual player and the classic MMO hardcore player. And I feel like this is as close as we've gotten so far, because even as I consider myself a hardcore player, just in the amount of time I put in, even when I'm playing it casually.
Yeah.
There's just so much to do and so much thought process put into so many different things that I feel like we're in a good, like, it's going to come down to how these raids play out. But I do feel like we're finally hitting that middle ground with things like trust and stuff.
Yeah.
Where the casuals can enjoy it, but the hardcores can get in and super blitz a dungeon down. And I know this is something we talked about 30 minutes ago, but I do agree we need a hard mode and some timer, because please just give me that.
Something.
I don't know.
Gamify it. Give me some time trials. Give me just like, we have so much really good content. I want a reason to go and do it. And obviously the reason's going to vary. You know, I think that they're moving that way. This is the dev team that, like, when they do these things, they love the game. They're passionate about it, and I think, and hopefully we don't, nobody leaks anything so that they can really truly blow our minds here in 2020. Are you going to be at FanFest in 2020?
Oh, I will be. Yeah, no, I've gone to every fan fest. I was at the last one.
Oh man. Okay, we're gonna hang out in this. We got to. It's like I've been to every one, and so it's just always.
I love fan fest. It's so much fun. That's why I was gonna go to Canada this weekend for TennoCon, but they just chose to do it in a weird regional airport. It wasn't feasible.
Where can people find you? Like, what do you got that you're working on right now? And obviously, I should have said at the top there, over on YouTube, like in the description below, links to everything he's about to tell you. We'll be there.
If you Google Comicstorian, I'll come up across the board all over the place. If you want to follow me on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/eligiblemonster. Two easiest ways to find me: Comicstorian and Eligible Monster. See, I can simplify it.
There it is. Links that will be in the description below. Do you got anything that you're pretty excited about that's coming out? Like, obviously, you just saw the Spider-Man movie, and you got some videos about to roll out on it. Like, you want to promote any of that?
I mean, not really. We got Spider-Man content coming out the wazoo, so that's pretty much it. Movie was good. I'm not gonna spoil anything. It's pretty good though. Yeah.
Sweet. Chris, you got anything you're working on want to share?
No. I'm just trying to get through Shadowbringers enough that I can maybe try some WoW Classic. So that's really it. And I thought, I was like, it's gonna be no problem. I'll be level 80 by like Monday. Have my class tapped. I'll have my Gunbreaker done by like the following Friday. Be done. And this game is enormous, like alarmingly so. But it should be a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, yeah, that's what it is, guys. So this is going to be a lot of fun. We'll run this podcast on Friday morning. Tomorrow morning, we're going to record another podcast with Scottson, who just finished it. So we're hoping to have finished the story and be able to run that on Monday. So we're going to be, there's two Casually Hardcores back to back for you guys this week. So be sure to tune in tomorrow live, or you'll see that as well. That's it. That wraps up the show.
Thank you guys for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We got to get you back because, like, dude, you're so much fun. You're fun. I was really happy to meet you out there at the media event, and you're just a ton of fun. I think we did become best friends, so that's always good.
Well, you're on Sergeant. I'll just come over to your server, just hang out with you guys.
Yeah,
I'll just
absolutely.
follow you around the story.
We got to sync up on some content for freaking sure. It's going to be a good time. Well, anyway, for Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris. And this is Comicstorian.
Am I supposed to say something here?
We never warned anybody.
Yeah,
you never prepped me. And I'm Benny.
Yeah.
I'm calling it. I'm joining their team now. That's
Absolutely. Guess what? Big announcement.
Surprise.
Anyway, surprise. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.
You have no idea how good it feels for me to know that somebody in my life is loving that game because I don't have time to do it.
And that's such a good game.
It was actually funny because when I first started doing the YouTube thing, we worked 12, 18-hour days. I had no time for any game. So 3 years into it, when Comicstorian threw up, I was like, I need to hire help because I want to play games and have my time back.
Yeah. Yeah. It is like, there is a lot of work that comes into it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like the work that you guys and the quality you guys produce with your videos, like it's awesome for me because I was really happy to discover you, and all I have to do is just kind of try to budget some time in my week to kick back and just hit a playlist, because literally I'm like, I love comics, and I like, okay, when was the last time I actually sat down and read bop 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 bop, and I'm like, okay, cool, like this is gonna be fantastic.
I appreciate that. I mean, that's how we try to set it up. The whole idea initially was I was explaining way back in the day, I was explaining comic books and video game lore to people who didn't have time. So they'd be I think the big game we started the whole thing off with was Metal Gear.
Yeah.
My wife wanted to get into the latest Metal Gear, and she was like, I just so sprawling. And I'm like, well, here, let me explain Metal Gear. And then we eventually turned it into a video series, and then I started doing comics the same way. And
Very
that
nice.
was a market that no one had.